WHO Europe now has more than 10 million COVID-19 cases. London, the World Health Organization's Europe director, said Thursday that the 53-country regions has again reached a new weekly record for confirmed cases, with more than 1.5 million confirmed last week and more than 10 million since the start of the pandemic. During a meeting with European health ministers, WHO European Regional Director Dr. Hans Kluge said hospitalizations have risen to levels unseen since the spring, and the deaths have risen by more than 30% in the last week. Europe is at the epicenter of this pandemic once again, Kluge said, at the risk of sounding alarmist. I must express our very real concern. Testing systems have been unable to keep up with widespread levels of transmission, and the test positivity levels have reached new heights, with most European countries exceeding 5% and many cases spreading unchecked, he said. Among with the usual European countries, WHO includes Russia and some Central Asian countries like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan in its Europe region. In the wake of France and Germany approving new restrictions in hopes of reversing the trend, Kluge called the national lockdown a last resort option, citing the considerable damage the measures inflict on economics, people's mental health, and the incidence of domestic violence. He said lockdowns should give countries the chance to recoup and scale up, so they can theoretically strengthen their health systems and contact tracing programs to quickly identify and stamp out new clusters. But numerous countries across Europe, such as Britain, failed to do so. Despite the UK's nationwide lockdown earlier this year, the country's contact tracing system remained unable to track down a significant percentage of the contacts of infected individuals. Many contacts also have refused to quarantine. Kluge also urged politicians to be led by scientific data in their outbreak responses. The British government went against the advice of its scientific advisors to implement a nationwide lockdown in September, instead pursuing a strategy of localized restrictions, which so far have had little impact on curbing the virus resurgence. Europe's struggles with significant spike in COVID-19 cases. British scientists estimated Thursday that there are about 96,000 new infections every day, and that the epidemic is doubling in size every 9 days. In France, officials cut the mandatory quarantine period from 14 days to 7, after reasoning that most people were not complying anyway, although there is no scientific basis for the change in guidance. Kluge said if countries decide to impose new lockdowns, schools should be largely exempt. We are also confident that children and adolescents are not considered primary drivers of COVID-19 transmission, he said. He said data from the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington estimated that a 95% compliance rate for mask wearing could save more than 265,000 lives across Europe by February 1st. He warned that countries' greatest concern at this point should be their health workers, while in March the critical limiting factors were intensive care units, ventilators, and personal protective equipment. Today, the single issue of greatest concern is the health workforce, he said, warning that doctors, nurses, and other medical personnel were burning out. Deputized federal agents can now wear body cameras with major exceptions, a sweeping at the time contentious policies barring the use of body cameras by police officials assigned to hundreds of federal investigative task forces around the nation has been largely reversed, the Justice Department said Thursday. The announcement of new federal guidelines on the wearing of body cameras by deputized federal agents comes as the nation has recently witnessed numerous controversial incidents involving the use of force by police, as well as attacks on officers in the line of duty. Under the new policy, which includes several major caveats, police departments will now have greater latitude in recording the actions of their own officials assisting in the execution of federal arrest and search warrants. Such recordings were previously banned by officials consisting the federal government, and the current Justice Department policy continues to generally prohibit full-time federal agents from wearing recording devices without special authorization. The department's policy that permits federal task force officials to use body-worn cameras when executing search and arrest warrants is a significant step towards the greater transparency, said the Justice Department spokesperson Christina Mastro Pasca. For decades, federal law enforcement agencies, which are relatively small in numbers when compared to the ranks of state and local police departments around the country, have partnered with non-federal entities to investigate and arrest fugitives, drug dealers, and other violent criminals, including suspected terrorists. For example, the FBI, one of the several federal agencies that operates investigative task forces, currently runs more than 200 joint terrorism task forces and 160 violent gang task forces across the country. In deputizing certain local officials as federal agents, the federal government is able to extend the jurisdiction of city, county, and state law enforcement to participate in the enforcement of federal criminal law. The arrangement also allows for the federal government to pay for overtime wages and other expenses incurred by local law enforcement officials participating in federal task forces. Major caveats While the new guidelines released by the Justice Department now allow participating local agencies to wear cameras, they come with a long list of caveats that greatly control what can and cannot be recorded. For example, local law enforcement task force officials are only allowed to activate their body cameras during a planned arrest or the execution of a court-ordered search warrant. The policy states officers may activate body-worn cameras while approaching a suspect or premises, but must switch off their cameras once a particular scene is determined to be under law enforcement control. The policy also prohibits officials from recording undercover personal information and informants and other sources, witness interviews, and sensitive investigative techniques and equipment used by law enforcement. In addition to the above guidelines, the new policy prevents task force officials from recording any investigative activity relating to the investigation of government officials, medical facilities, or matters of national security, while individual partnering police agencies may use task force officials' body camera footage to conduct internal investigation of their officials. The new guidelines mandate that any public release of body camera footage must be authorized by the Justice Department. The decision to allow local law enforcement officials to operate body camera while assisting federal agents followed several requests and at times demands from local leaders representing departments whose regulations mandate the use of cameras by their personnel. In May of last year, the Washington Post reported that Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and Police Chief Erica Shields pulled approximately 25 police officials out of a federal task force of agents from the FBI, Drug Enforcement Administration, and the U.S. Marshals Service over the federal government's no-camera policy. And last year, the city of St. Paul, Minnesota, withdrew its officials from the U.S. Marshals Task Force over the federal government's refusal to allow personnel to wear department-mandated body cameras. According to the Marshall Project, a non-profit news organization that covers the U.S. criminal justice system, the issue of body cameras has garnered increased attention throughout 2020 following the controversial police killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Richard Brooks, and others. Criminal justice reform advocates say visual evidence of police enforcement encounters is critical to reconstructing events and holding officials accountable for their actions. In addition to helping ensure accountability, many cities that require the use of police body cameras have claimed that visuals of encounters also help promote official safety, resolve complaints against officials, and assist with the prosecution of police investigations. And law enforcement experts such as Wexler of the Police Executive Research Forum say video of incidents involving the use of force by police are critical training tools for improving effectiveness at departments across the country. Washington, despite ongoing discussion with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin over another coronavirus relief package, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Thursday reviewed several areas that are still unresolved in talks with the Trump administration, indicating the two sides remain far apart on another measure designed to provide assistance to American families struggling during the coronavirus pandemic. In a letter to Mnuchin, who has been leading negotiations for the White House, Pelosi placed the blame for the ongoing statement squarely on the Trump administration, arguing Democrats still have not received words on compromise language for a strategic testing, tracing, and treatment plan, vaccines, and Obama coverage for Americans who are out of work. Your response are critical for our negotiation to continue, the California Democrat told Mnuchin in the letter dated Thursday. The president's words that after the election, we will get the best stimulus package you have ever seen, only have meaning if he can get Mitch McConnell to take his hand off the pause button and get the Senate Republican chairman moving toward agreement with their House counterparts. Trump, Pelosi, and McConnell at odds over coronavirus stimulus deal. Pelosi also indicated there is disagreement between Democrats and the White House on 6 issues: funding for state and local governments, funding for schools, child care, the earned income and child tax credits, unemployment benefits, OSHA, and liability. As the coronavirus surge and the stock market plummets, we are still awaiting the Trump administration's promised response on multiple items of critical importance, she said. In her weekly press conference on Thursday, Pelosi also noted that Mnuchin had said he was willing to compromise on fundings for testing earlier this month, but had then failed to do so. In a letter replying to Pelosi later on Thursday, Mnuchin accused the speakers of pulling a political stunt by releasing her letter to the press at the same time as she sent it to him. Mnuchin also said that the White House had provided reasonable compromises on state and local funding, school, extended unemployment benefits, liability protections, and OSHA. Your all or none approach is hurting hardworking Americans who need help now. Mnuchin said Pelosi and Mnuchin have been engaged in negotiations over another coronavirus relief measure for weeks, but hopes of a deal passing before the November 3 election have slipped away. Members of the House have been in their home districts for much of the October, while the Senate adjourned Monday after voting to confirm Justice Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. The Senate will next convene November 9, while the House will not hold votes until the week of November 16. Last week, the Senate voted on a tailored $500 billion coronavirus relief measure put forth by Republicans, but the bill was blocked by Senator Democrats, who said it didn't do enough. The GOP meanwhile accused the Democrats of refusing to compromise. We have been working on coronavirus relief. Unfortunately, the Speaker has not been able to agree to anything remotely reasonable, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said in an interview with Fox News on Monday. McConnell had previously said that if Pelosi and Mnuchin were able to reach an agreement, he would bring their proposal to the Senate floor for consideration. However, CBS News confirmed last week that McConnell told the Senate Republican that he had warned the White House against reaching an agreement on coronavirus relief bill ahead of the election. Pelosi and Mnuchin last spoke Monday for 52 minutes. The Speaker's spokesman, Drew Harmill, said, adding, progress depends on Leader McConnell agreeing to bipartisan comprehensive legislation to crush the virus, honor our heroes, our essential workers, and put money in the pockets of the American people. Pelosi said on Thursday that she believed the Congress needed to prepare for the next phase of legislation if a new administration takes office in January. I feel very confident that Joe Biden will be elected president on Tuesday, Pelosi said, we have to be ready for how we are going to go down a different path. Over 225,000 Americans have died from the virus, and millions have lost their jobs due to the economic fallout caused by the pandemic. Glenn Greenwald is resigning from The Intercept, the news site he co-founded in 2013. Not long after his most prominent work, the publication of articles based on leaks from former National Security Agency contractor Edward Snowden. U.S. journalist Glenn Greenwald checked his news website at his home in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. A judge in Brazil dismissed accusations that Glenn Greenwald was involved in hacking phones of Brazilian officials following weeks of criticism that his prosecution would infringe on constitutional protection for journalists. In a lengthy letter of resignation published Thursday, Greenwald alleged his editors censored an article he wrote this week about former Vice President Joe Biden. He claimed that the editors were refusing to publish it unless I remove all sections critical of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. The candidate, vehemently supported by all New York-based Intercept editors involved in this effort at suppression. Greenwald also included the text of separate resignation email he sent to Michael Bloom, the president of First Look Medium, which owns the Intercept, and B-Test Reed, the editor-in-chief. The precipitating but by no means only cause is that the Intercept is attempting to censor my articles in violation of both my contract and the fundamental principle of editorial freedom, Greenwald emailed says. In a statement issued after his story was published, Reed said Greenwald's narrative about his departure from the Intercept is teeming with distortions and inaccuracy, all of them designed to make him appear a victim rather than a grown person throwing tantrum. She said that Greenwald demands the absolute right to determine what he will publish, adding, he believes that anyone who disagrees with him is corrupt, and anyone who presumes to edit him is a censor. We have the greatest respect for the journalist Glenn Greenwald used to be, and we remain proud of much of the work we did with him over the past 6 years. Reed said in the statement, it is Glenn who had strayed from his original journalistic roots, not the Intercept. Greenwald shared his resignation letter in a series of tweets on Thursday. Greenwald said he would soon publish the article in question on Substack, the newsletter platform to which he posted the letter. He added that he will continue to publish on Substack, which he heralded as a place where journalists have come in order to practice journalism free of increasingly repressive climate that is engulfing national mainstream media outlets across the country. Substack has attracted several journalists looking to leave their corporate jobs to go independent. Longtime columnist Andrew Swilan resigned from New York Magazine in July and now focuses on a Substack newsletter, which is listed as number 5 on the top paid publications on the platform. Greenwald said in his letter that resigning was not an easy decision. Like anyone with young children, a family, and numerous obligations, I do this with some trepidation, but also with a conviction that there is no other choice, Greenwald wrote. Thanks, reading.